edición especial, Entrevista a Chuck Schumer.
Familia, bienvenidos a esta edición de Estudio DC. Gracias por acompañarnos. Hoy nos encontramos con el senador Chuck Schumer, líder de la mayoría del Senado estadounidense, acá en nuestros estudios de HITN en Brooklyn Navy Yard. Aprovechamos esta oportunidad para hablar de temas importantes como sus esfuerzos y logros en el Senado al pasar leyes para una mejor infraestructura y calidad de vida de los veteranos de guerra y sobre su visión para los jóvenes que contemplan una carrera política. El senador Charles L. Schumer comenzó su carrera política en el 1975 y hasta el sol de hoy no ha perdido una elección. Su energía, aún con 73 años, es palpable. Después de más de 4 décadas, el senador sigue visitando los 62 condados que constituyen el estado de New York. Con nosotros, el senador Chuck Schumer. His name is Charles L. Schumer, native of Brooklyn, New York. Good to see you again. Thank you for coming into the studio.
It is always good to be with you, always.
Terrific. There's a few things going on in Washington and in the nation.
I'd say so.
Before we get to that, I just want, because there's a lot of people who are not in our age bracket. We're still young. But you and I think, voted for the first time in 1972. Was that your first presidential election?
Yes, 72.
Right. McGovern.
1968, I was 18.
And you couldn't vote.
You couldn't vote. We changed the law. I worked to change the law. You know what we used to say? If you're old enough to die because you could be drafted and sent to Vietnam, you're old enough to vote. And
That's
we
right.
won that fight.
You are the hardest working elected official, politician that I know in New York State.
Thank you.
I'm not going to say over the country because I don't know. And Hakeem Jeffries is sort of trying to keep up with you.
Well, Brooklyn's in the House and the Senate.
That's right. And Nancy Pelosi is still going. I don't know how she does it with the heels. Senator, the reason I'm saying this for our audience, that actually there's a lot of young people who actually look at this, and there's the whole thing about questioning the age. Oh, these guys are too old, all that. But you have been running elections since 1975. You have not lost one. You have going for the 5th term.
I just won the 5th term. First New Yorker ever.
What is the difference of having a seasoned person
Right.
running and staying in the game versus a newcomer who has to learn the ropes? Because, you know, let me just point this out. He knows the federal government, but he also knows the state government, and the power rests in the states, which people forget. This is how our government is created. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are right.
Tell me why this is important.
Okay, first, I feel like 40. I have as much energy. I wake up Monday morning so enthusiastic to go to work. It's the opportunity to make the world a better place. I still visit. When I started in the Senate in 1999, I said I'd visit every county every year. I'm still doing it, all 62 counties. And so I have such enthusiasm for the job, but at the same time, I have experience. When I need to do something for New York, when I need to do something for the Latino community, for Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Haiti, anything, I know what buttons to push. I know who to call. I know what to do. So it's a combination of keeping that vigor, keeping that enthusiasm, keeping that desire to do good, at the same time combining it with the experience to actually get something done. And the record shows it. In our Senate in 2022, under my leadership as majority leader, we passed more things than has been done in 30 years. We passed the IRA, which lowered prescription drug prices. Right this week, they announced, last week, 10 new drugs, very expensive, you know, like Eliquis and drugs like that, whose prices are going to be cut by a third because we're negotiating with the pharmaceutical companies. We passed laws for infrastructure, to rebuild our infrastructure, and we said there should be job training for communities of color, for communities that had been left out in the past. I insisted that it be there. We did for the first time in 30 years, we did something to get the guns off the street, said that young people couldn't. We did something for our veterans. So many of our veterans, and so many are Latino, who volunteer and fight and go overseas for us. We said when they were exposed to the burn pits, the VA said you can't get help. We did it. We did so much. The list goes on and on and on. And it's a combination of youthful enthusiasm, which I think I still have, and experience.
That youthful enthusiasm and the desire to change things, which is we were all very young, very idealistic, yes. But you got to keep the idealism with practicality, which is what you're saying. What do you advise young people who are saying, the system is wrong, I don't want to vote, these guys don't know what they're doing, they're old, they should retire? What do you tell a person who's starting out, a young 23, 24, 25-year-old Chuck Schumer? What would be the advice you give yourself?
I give the advice to young people when they think about it, to think of what good can be done to help. Let me give you something that Kamala Harris, who's really looking forward, proposed. First-time home buyers. So many of our people are rising into the middle class, and they have enough money to buy a home to pay the monthly mortgage fee, but they don't have enough for the down payment. They've made the down payments higher. You have to pay up to 20, 25%. And people don't have that in the bank. So Kamala Harris proposed, and I will get passed, should we keep the majority, $25,000 help for first-time home buyers. So many young people, whether they be Latino, black, white, you name it, Asian American, will be able to then have a home, and every month when they pay the mortgage, they're building equity instead of just the rent going to a landlord and it's gone from them. That's just one of so many. Prescription drugs.
Right.
We're trying to get the cost of, so many of our young people have diabetes. We got the cost lower, $35 instead of hundreds of dollars a month for people 65 and over. We're now going to get it for people, all people. Every area you look, job training. We have insisted that many of these new jobs, when we're building the new roads and building the factories, the gateway, it's going to be the biggest public works project in the country right here in New York, but there's going to be job training through the unions and others to get young people who have never had these kinds of opportunities to get these good paying jobs. There's so much.
En esta segunda mitad, nos enfocaremos en las características que distinguen a ambos partidos y sobre cómo los republicanos, que solían ser el partido defensor del pueblo y de sus derechos al voto, ha cambiado tanto bajo Donald Trump. También hablaremos sobre cómo después de casi 40 años, la economía sigue siendo un punto de suma importancia en las elecciones y de cómo personas que nos representan, como el senador Schumer, luchan por limitar la inflación de los precios de las medicinas, viviendas y estudios. Escuchemos esta segunda parte. We've been voting elections since 1972. Again, I go back to that. Why? This is going to be the 14th time we vote for president of our nation.
Yes.
And yet, correct me if I'm wrong, you still hear, oh, gas prices are high,
Yep.
you can't buy food, it's too high, our income is not enough. There's nothing different.
Well, the inflation, which really got much worse, we had pretty low inflation
Right.
from about 2008 until COVID hit.
Right.
And now we have to really get a handle on it. Gas prices are going down. They were 4, they're 3. We've proposed go after gouging in the grocery stores. So many prices go up and up and up. Even when there's adequate supply, we want them to go down. Go after this what we call greedonomics. A bag of cookies is now half the number of cookies, but they charge the same thing. No one went after them. We're going to go after them.
You're going to go. How do you go after a person who actually sells you less food for the same price?
FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, can look at price gouging and unfair pricing, and they can do something about it.
And what can they do about it?
They can force the company to lower the price.
They can force them.
Yes, that's what gouging's all about. They find gouging, they can.
So how do you force them? You sue them?
You have an order that they should do it, and when they don't, you go to court and force them to do it. We know that high prices are one of the biggest issues. You know what Donald Trump proposed? A tariff. He wants to raise people's prices.
How can the Republican Party allow itself to be controlled by...
Donald Trump has so misdirected the Republican Party, maybe worst of all by divisiveness. He doesn't win elections by proposing good things that will help people. He doesn't win elections by bringing people together and creating a winning coalition. He divides. This group should hate, that group should hate, this group should hate, that group. The Republican Party has gotten much worse under him. I never liked a lot of the things. They favored the wealthy too much. But they used to be for voting rights. They used to be for immigration reform. They're not. Here's my hope, Gerson. Hope. We hope that if Donald Trump loses, and loses by quite a bit, the Republican Party will expel his kinds of thinking from their way. Because he's made them, even though I didn't agree with them in the past, much worse on other things. And he's not been honest about it. He says one thing on abortion one day, one thing on, he now says, oh, I'm not really against IVF or abortion. But he was, and he has been all along. He bragged that he put these 3 people on the Supreme Court who took away women's rights.
My problem with what I see, the partisanship, I think it's healthy for this nation, for a democracy. What happened to the decent, law-abiding Republicans who used to say family values? I really am concerned about this.
Yes.
You deal with, are there still those Republicans in hiding? Do they talk to you in a decent, common way?
Okay, let me say a couple of things. First, to show you they can sometimes help, of all those bills I mentioned, except for the IRA, because they wouldn't go, the Republicans, none of them would go against the pharmaceutical companies or big oil. But on all those other bills, the Chips and Science bill, the bill on guns, the bill on infrastructure,
Right.
we got a minority, but enough Republicans to vote with us to pass it. But when they talk to me, there's one word: fear.
Of what?
Of Donald Trump's control of the Republican primaries, that when he gets up and opposes somebody and uses his jingoistic, most Americans don't agree, but a lot of these primary voters do. And so they're afraid. But I believe this, and I'm an optimist, as you know, all the years. I wouldn't be in this business if I weren't still an optimist. But if he leaves, I think we're going to find the Republican Party. They won't agree with us on a lot of things. They will be conservative, but they will go back to the way of trying to, in their own way, work when we can work together.
Senator, where do you hope that you can not only maintain the leadership of the Democrats, but gain? Do you have actual states that you can tell? Because you're good at elections. So tell me, where is it that Chuck Schumer gets some money?
We have some great candidates, and I think they're going to win, including 2 new Latino candidates. I'm always trying to, of our 6 new candidates, 5 are people of color, 2 Latinos. And that is Ruben Gallego in Arizona, where he's ahead right now.
Right.
And Debbie Mucarsel Powell, who is only 2 points behind in Florida. We have 3 African-American candidates. Colin Allred in Texas, a really good guy. We have Lisa Blunt Rochester in Delaware, and Angela Also Brooks in Maryland, and the first Korean-American from New Jersey who would join us as well.
Right.
And by the way, you know how the power of federal judges, lifetime appointment.
Of course.
I, as majority leader, have put in more Latino and Latina judges than we have had ever before. 2/3 of the judges we put in here, we can do it without the Republicans because we just need 51 votes. 2/3 are women and 2/3 are people of color, a record number of Latinos. One of the things I'm proudest of, you may remember this, I recommended to Barack Obama a judge from the Bronx named Sonia Sotomayor to get on the Supreme Court.
That's right, from the federal bench. Federal bench.
But now we have many more Latino and Latina judges, and they have huge power. And at least the bench, instead of being a bunch of white males from big corporate law firms, is now much more representative of America.
Senator, so we've changed a lot. Your party had to go now with vice president in a record setting. I've never seen an election like this. I'm right now like, if I were a Democrat, are you biting your nails? Do you have nails left? Because right now, tell us what you feel confident that Kamala Harris can bring to this that you didn't have. Not criticizing Joe Biden, but it's a whole different campaign, different
First, let me say this about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
When he decided not to run, it was an act of patriotism. How many times in history does someone who has that much power relinquish it, give it up? He did it because he was a patriot, but he also said he realized that because so many people, maybe incorrectly, felt he couldn't do the job because he was old and all the propaganda, that he said, look, if I don't run, we have a better chance of beating Donald Trump. Rightly or wrongly, we do. And so he did it. And Kamala Harris has put together she's not just going after Trump, and she does it in a deft way. She doesn't just scream at him. She uses humor. She uses subtlety. It's driving him crazy. I think it's driving him crazy.
But the fact that it's a woman and a black woman and a very intelligent.
But she also has a program that really affects what average people think of. That first-time homebuyer thing I love, because so many people now I meet. We have, many immigrants who have worked their way up over the last decades who have come here, and now their kids want to buy a home. This will help home ownership, which you have a home, you have a piece of the rock.
3 million homes is what they're targeting. That's a lot. And hopefully she'll. Let me ask you this. Both Joe Biden from the Senate, Kamala Harris from the Senate, what is Senator Schumer? Should the Democrats win a majority, what are the priorities? Give me 5 that you would tell Madam President, if it ever happens, Madam President, these are what we need in the Senate in the first 100 days.
Much more housing, as I mentioned. Getting the cost of prescription drugs lower. We passed a good thing. No senior will pay more than $2,000 for prescription drugs. You know the heartbreak? Someone goes to the doctor, they say, you have this form of cancer or diabetes, and you could die or be very, very laid up unless you get this drug. They go to the drugstore, it's $1,000 for the pills. Now we'll say no one pays more than $2,000 for all their drugs over the course of a year. I want to do that for everybody, not just for over 65. Over 65, we did it because we could do that without Republican support.
There's a lot of young people that need medications.
That's right. So that's the second thing. The third thing I want to do, more job training. We have a new economy. Mm-hmm. We have lots of skilled young people who want to work in that economy, many of them people of color who have not been, there are barriers. I want to provide lots more of job training for those people. Very, very important. Fourth thing I want to do is make sure, you mentioned it, our democracy is preserved. They're trying to take away voting rights in Arizona, in Georgia. I would like to see the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We have a bill that would do it. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act says, Justice Roberts, in one of the worst decisions, the Shelby decision, said that the Justice Department no longer had to clear all these things that might get in the way of people voting, that are barriers. We would put that back so the Justice Department would have what's called preclearance. We'd get rid of this horrible redistricting where all the districts are gerrymandered, and maybe best of all, the idea that billionaires can give huge amounts of money. This is happening right now with the Republicans.
It gets worse,
yeah. Undisclosed, we'd get rid of that.
A lot of people really don't understand that our democracy is at stake. What do you tell a young person? I go back to the youth. What do you tell those young people that have lost, that they really don't understand that we could lose this democracy? Where is the hope that Chuck Schumer has for this nation to be able to protect it?
The hope is that people, when we make the case clearly to them, as we are doing right now, it was hard to do it in the past, going over all the things that we've talked about in terms of housing and high costs and things like that, that they will understand that there's a huge difference between the parties, and that if we don't have democracy, not only will things not get better, we're trying to make them better, but they'll get a lot worse. Life will be much harder. Life will be harder for everybody except the very, very wealthy. When Donald Trump says he wants to put a tariff on all goods coming into America,
that I don't understand.
It raises everybody's prices. You'll go to the grocery store, and if you think the price of these things are too expensive now, wow. So he will make it a lot worse, and he will make it harder to ever get rid of him. You know what he said? He said, we should only have one election at one point, or something like that.
Yes.
I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
What is that all about? If you look at dictatorships throughout the world, or democracies that are, look at Venezuela. It was a democracy. You put in an autocrat. He's still not giving up power. And the people of Venezuela are hurting so badly. I've just read that Maracaibo lost a quarter of its population. That could happen here.
We got to come back on Latin America because we point the finger at Venezuela. We really haven't acted really well with, Latin America, Central America, Caribbean.
Latin America has been a neglected part of our foreign policy. We ought to pay more attention. I have focused on a couple of areas. Puerto Rico, where I've gotten more money for Puerto Rico than anyone has. But we have to pay much more attention to Latin America. And if we had closeness with Latin America, it could benefit both the United States and Latin America and the Latino population.
El nombre de él es Charles L. Schumer, senador por el estado de Nueva York, trabaja bien fuerte y lo hace consistentemente. Thank you so much, Senator.
Great to be
here. Great seeing you again.
Keep up the good work. Stay young. You know what our theme song is? Forever Young.
Forever Young. Okay, we're going to play that on the way out. Gracias, Senador. Él es Chuck Schumer, Senator Chuck Schumer, y nos acompaña en esta vez para hablarnos de lo que viene, las elecciones venideras del 5 de noviembre. November 5th, everybody's got to vote.
Please vote.
That's
Please.
it. Participate in the
Our
democracy.
country depends on it.
That's it. Thank you, Senator.
Thanks.
El optimismo del senador nos llena de esperanza para esta elección presidencial, que sigo considerando la más importante que me ha tocado vivir. Schumer nos deja con un mensaje de positivismo para nuestros jóvenes y aquellos que contemplan una carrera política. Este optimismo que él hace notar como su arma secreta se extiende también hacia el Partido Republicano y cómo ese partido puede renacer y reparar el daño que le ha hecho Donald Trump. Senador, una vez más, muchas gracias por su presencia.